She survived combat zones overseas only to have a gun pulled on her at her own son's funeral by an American cop. It was a heavy gray morning in Arlington. Not the kind of gray that made you want to stay in bed, but the kind that pressed down on your chest and made you feel like the sky itself was mourning. General Renee Alicia Marshall had buried soldiers before. Too many. She had written the letters, folded the flags, stood at attention through the gun salutes. But this time the casket held her son. Staff Sergeant Malik Marshall, 29 years old, killed during a routine patrol in Kandahar after an IED struck his convoy. She wore her full uniform not because she had to, but because Malik had always said, "When I go, I want my mom standing tall in her stars." And so she did. The deep navy jacket, the medals lined like history across her chest, her hat perfectly creased. She looked unbreakable from the outside, but inside her heart felt like it was disintegrating piece by piece. The family arrived in a long black SUV. Renee sat between her sister, Lydia, and Malik's godfather, Command Sergeant Major Otis Hall, who had served with Renee back in Mosul. Her hands trembled as she held a folded program with Malik's photo on the front, a still frame of her baby boy grinning in his fatigues. It didn't feel real. As they pulled up near Section 60, the place reserved for the newest war dead, Renee could already hear the solemn notes of the military band warming up. A row of soldiers stood stiff along the path, rifles angled down in front of them. It was the kind of organized pain that only the military knew how to deliver with precision. "I don't think I can do this," Renee whispered, staring straight ahead. Her voice was flat, not panicked, not crying, just drained. "You've done harder," Otis murmured, squeezing her hand. "But I know this ain't right." The door opened and Renee stepped out into the open air, her heels clicking against the pavement. Her uniform caught the eye of almost everyone nearby. A few saluted as she passed. Some whispered her name. She was recognizable. First black woman to reach 4 stars in the Army, a public figure in military circles. But none of that mattered today. She was just a mother walking toward the worst moment of her life. She took a deep breath and looked ahead, only for her eyes to fall on a police officer pacing near the parked vehicles. His patrol car was idling, parked slightly crooked on the curb. He wore mirrored sunglasses despite the cloud cover, and his hand kept drifting near his holster. That's the first moment her stomach tensed. Officer Ryan Delaney wasn't supposed to be there for security. He was just local traffic detail called in by the city because of the expected turnout, but no one had briefed him on who was attending. He turned toward her. His brows dropped beneath the edge of his sunglasses. "Hey!" he barked suddenly. "Ma'am, can I see some ID?" Renee blinked. She paused, thought maybe he was talking to someone else. "I'm speaking to you, ma'am," he said louder, walking toward her, hand now fully resting on his weapon. "I'm General Renee Marshall," she said calmly, slowly raising her hand toward her coat pocket. "I'm here for my son's funeral. That's my family over there." I said, "Stop right there," Delaney shouted, this time pulling his weapon from the holster. Gasps rang out from nearby. A child screamed. Renee froze in place, both hands raised in the air. "I'm not armed," she said slowly, keeping her voice even. "This is my dress uniform." "You're making a mistake." But Delaney didn't move. His gun was aimed at her chest. His finger was on the trigger, and the funeral had just come to a complete halt. But that wasn't even the worst part, because no one could believe what he said next. "Drop to the ground," Officer Ryan Delaney barked. General Renee Marshall didn't move. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, but inside her brain was screaming. She had spent over 30 years training soldiers on how to survive threats like this. But in all her tours, in all her battles, she never imagined she'd be on the receiving end of a loaded gun at her own son's funeral. "I'm unarmed," she repeated louder this time. "I'm a United States Army general." "You're pointing a weapon at a mother on the worst day of her life." "I don't care what kind of costume you're wearing," Delaney snapped. "I said get on the ground before I drop you." Otis, Malik's godfather, stepped forward fast. "Sir, that's General Renee Marshall. You're about to make the worst mistake of your life. Put the weapon down. Back off," Delaney screamed, swinging the gun toward Otis. Several attendees gasped. A soldier on the honor detail took one step forward, but a superior officer motioned for him to stay still. Nobody wanted to escalate it further, but no one could believe what they were watching. The gun hadn't just been pulled. It was steady. Delaney was ready. Lydia, Renee's sister, was crying now. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "Renee, don't move. Please don't move." Renee stayed locked in place, hands still raised. Her heart was pounding, but her voice stayed calm. "Officer, I'm going to open my coat pocket and take out my military ID slowly." "You reach, I shoot," he said without hesitation. A soft shuffle of feet could be heard around them. Mourners were pulling children back, whispering to one another. Two women who had served with Renee were already recording with their phones. And that's when one of the honor guard soldiers made a call over the radio. "We need an immediate supervisor at Section 60. Armed officer threatening a civilian, possibly racial profiling. Urgent." But that help wasn't there yet. Delaney kept his weapon trained on Renee. "Turn around," he growled. "On your knees, hands on your head." Renee closed her eyes for half a second. She had faced live gunfire. She had walked through bomb zones. She had lost friends, soldiers, and now her only child. But this was the moment that nearly broke her. Still, she slowly lowered herself to the ground. Not because she was afraid, not because she thought she was guilty, but because the last thing she wanted was for someone else to get hurt. From the crowd, an older veteran in a wheelchair shouted, "What the hell is wrong with you? That's General Marshall." Delaney didn't respond. He was locked in his own world, tunnel vision. His lip curled, his hand didn't shake. "Somebody tackle that man," someone yelled from the crowd, but Renee raised her hand just slightly, enough to signal no. She didn't want it to turn into a bloodbath. That's when a different officer came running down the road. Lieutenant Maya Lin, who had been coordinating traffic near the entrance gate, saw the scene from 40 yards out and sprinted full speed toward them. "Delaney, holster your weapon now," she shouted. Delaney didn't move. "I said holster it." "That's General Marshall." Lin was almost in his face now, but he still didn't lower the gun. So Lin shoved his arm upward with both hands and knocked the weapon clean out of his grip. Clattered onto the pavement. Delaney staggered back, confused, flustered, then reached for it again. Lin grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back. "You're done. You're done," she said through her teeth. Two nearby officers helped restrain him, finally dragging him off to the side. Renee was still kneeling, both hands on her head. Someone rushed to her. Sergeant Crystal Nels, who had served under Renee during a deployment in Ramadi. She helped her up gently. "Ma'am, it's okay now. We've got you." Renee stood slowly. Her knees felt like they were made of stone. She looked around at the sea of stunned faces, the silence, the tears, the children clinging to their parents, the casket still waiting to be lowered. Her son's final moment destroyed. But if she thought the worst was over, she had no idea how big the story was about to get.